of it's a continuation of a lot of experiences sharing about peace and matters of peace for a global home. And as of today, I would like to welcome, as my colleague Therese just made an introduction, that everybody should share their own stories about what makes them, how do they find their common purpose on this globe and this earth. So it's a sharing experiences from each side of the globe to have a common understanding of when we talk about peace, what does it really mean to each one of us? We have things that we're doing in our communities, we have things that we do in our societies that really want us, we really hope they could continue the way they are or make a little change in the way things are happening. But what is our common understanding of the purpose that we have in this globe? As scholars and other visitors, you're welcome, and the floor is open. Welcome. Any raised hand?
Sorry, I think that Thomas said he has prepared something to share with us. And after that, Thomas Daffern. Yes,
okay.
Thomas.
Dr. Thomas, so, welcome.
Right, thank you, Betty. Yeah, I understood George wanted us to give a little talk, so I prepared a little 20-minute summary to get us going, you know. And I was asking, how can I summarize my life's work as a peace scholar in 20 minutes? And I decided to do it in the following wise. I'm going to be sharing my passion for libraries, and I'm going to be sharing the libraries where I've done my research over the years. So I'm going to start with my parents' library. I was born in Canada and we moved to Brighton in Sussex. My parents were teachers, educators, scholars themselves in languages. I remember my parents' library as a child, sitting there, looking at these amazing books, looking at poetry, dictionaries, Latin dictionaries, and just in awe of all this knowledge. My parents were on the left politically, so we had the collected works of Marx, the Left Book Club. I looked at these things, I didn't know what they meant, but I knew they were important, and one day I would study them. I discovered Spinoza in their library, and Lucretius, and Plato, and some of the core texts of philosophy. And I think this is what made me want to study and become a philosopher. So my parents' library was hugely influential to my upbringing. That's the first library I want to mention. The second library is a long story, but I started a philosophy degree at the University of Calgary in my late teens, early 20s, found the teaching abysmal and very restrictive. It was very much about Anglo-centric philosophy. And as a rebel, I rebelled because I wanted to study world philosophy and I wanted to study Oriental thought and, you know, Eastern thought, Buddhism and stuff. So I resigned from the university. And I went to live in Alberta in Canada, back home. And I studied at the University of Calgary in all my spare time. In my early 20s, I was working as a nursing orderly in a hospital for Canadian veterans, which got me interested in peace and war prevention. But all my spare time I spent at the University of Calgary, which is a haven for scholarship. They had the collected works of everything. And that's where I first read the Bible. It's where I first read the Quran, all the Hindu scriptures, the Muslim scriptures. It's where I read Kant. It's where I read Hegel and where I properly read Marx and everything. It was like a paradise to me. I spent 4 years in the University of Calgary library. And I would take books home to my little cabin in the mountains on the outskirts of Calgary in a rucksack through 30-degree below zero temperatures, walking uphill for 2 miles. That was my, love of learning. I then went back to England and Wales and Britain, and I want to honour the National Library of Wales, which is in Aberystwyth. If you don't know it, it's the National Library of Wales. I lived in Wales for 10 years, and I got very into the Celtic traditions. I studied the Druidic path, which is, and I learned some Welsh. And it's a very ancient pre-Christian pagan tradition, Druidry, in which the trees are the alphabet of the gods. And the ancient bards of Wales wrote their wisdom in poetry, which they channeled from the gods. I'd also become a poet by then and a bard. So living in Wales and going to my idea of a good holiday was to go to the National Library of Wales, camp in a tent in a field nearby and just spend the whole day in the library. And the Welsh have a very stubborn commitment to peace. They became Christian after the Christian era, but they're still committed to peace through all the faiths. And, you know, I resonate with them. I spent a lot of time in London. I gravitated towards the capital in Britain. And I lived in London for 10 years. And I used the British Library, of course. If you don't know it, in the old days, it was in the British Museum. So I spent literally hours and hours and hours in the British Museum Library, the great round reading room where Marx studied. And I kind of did it as an homage. I knew Marx was clever and he got many brilliant ideas, but I knew he was also wrong on some fundamentals. And I wanted to know why he was wrong. So I was sort of trying to repair the mistakes. And I was an omnivore. I read for hours and hours and hours, days and days in the British Library. I worked in a hospital nearby to be able to live in the middle of Bloomsbury and then just would walk across Russell Square to the British Library. And of course, this is all set against the backdrop of the Cold War, rivalry between the communist system and the Western system. And I was working on a synthesis. Is it possible to reconcile them? I also discovered another library in London called the London Library, which, if you don't know it, it was set up by Victorian intellectuals in protest against the British Library, because you can't take books out of the British Library. It's a reference library. So I became a member of the London Library, and you can take out like up to 30 or 40 books. It's got 5 million books. It's in St. James's Square. And I became a devoted reader there for 10 years. I also ended up at the University of London doing my degrees, and I used the libraries of the University of London. They were my, like SOAS library, if you don't know it, School of Oriental and African Studies. It's where I first encountered in-depth academically African studies and Oriental studies. And I would spend hours and hours just in awe of the collections. And then also the School of Slavonic and East European Studies, which was my alma mater. It's where I was studying. Again, a brilliant library in Senate House. If you don't know it, you know, it's a haven for scholarship. And then the London School of Economics Library as well, because London's a federation of colleges. So the LSE Library was, you know, you could spend days wandering and studying in there. The history of early socialist utopian thought, the Fabian Society, you know, etc. I also was working at the University of London by then, having done my degrees, and I used the University of the Institute of Education Library. I got very interested in the history of education and the philosophy of education, and how can we teach peace? So my passion for books and libraries and studies ended up with me getting a job to create an Institute of Peace Education at the University of London. And I loved the holdings of the Institute. And I was writing a feasibility study and beginning a doctorate, which was about education for peace, how we can study and make a difference as scholars. I also taught at the Muslim College in West London, and I loved the Muslim College Library, which was run by a friend of mine, Dr. Zaki Badawi, and the amazing collection of Islamic classics he had in his library. I became a specialist in interfaith dialogue for peace, and including Islamic thought for peace. And so, you know, I've spent a lot of time in Islamic libraries as well. I also went to Moscow in 1990 and was elected coordinator of philosophers for peace globally. This is when the Cold War was at its worst and we were trying to disengage and say, let's not blow each other up with nuclear weapons. I played a little role in that as Secretary General of this Philosophers for Peace. And of course, I went to the Moscow Lenin Library, which is the great library in Moscow. I paid my homage I got my little red card still of membership. And, you know, I discovered, gosh, the Russians are not all dreadful demons. They're incredibly interesting intellectuals and philosophers. And we made sort of a peace pact among us philosophers to work for peace forever. I also traveled to the States and I explored the holdings of the Library of Congress, which I love. I spent a lot of time there. Also in California, I went to Berkeley University Library and Columbia University. I spent a lot of happy hours studying in Columbia, New York. And also Harvard University. I went to the J.F. Kennedy School of Government and discovered lots of peace-related literature in the Kennedy School of Government. They have a lot of, obviously, law and peace, they overlap. And I felt it was so sad he was assassinated. I went to the Middle East and as a peace scholar, and I'd set up the Institute of Peace Studies by then at the university. And I remember first going to the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. It's like a paradise to me. I love that university and its holdings on Jewish scholarship. The Library of Gershom Scholem, the world's great expert on the Kabbalah, are all there. Einstein's archive is there. I was there in the 90s when it was there was peace. Rabin was making peace for the Palestinians. We believed in a two-state solution. I'm mortified what's happened since then, and I think scholars haven't been doing their duty in that part of the world to really get peace. So I set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the Middle East. I've been working on that since. But you know, I honor the libraries in Jerusalem and in Bethlehem, which I also visited. I went to India 10 times on my peace scholarship mission, trying to get peace through studies and learning. And I've been to many libraries in India. The National Library of India in Calcutta is definitely worth spending time. I remember the pigeons in the forecourts. They, you know, where you leave your coats at the entrance, these pigeons rule the place. They trot around as if they're the lords and ladies of the library. And it's a fantastic place. I went to the Library of the Theosophical Society headquarters in Adyar. I've also been to Theosophical Society libraries in London and Edinburgh. And again, it's every library has its own scent, its own smell, its own level of dust. The Indian libraries have more dust than other libraries, but that's part of the charm. That's part of the beauty. I went to the Buddhist Society Library a lot in London. I got into Buddhism, and that was set up by Christmas Humphreys. So, and then I also want to pay homage to Oxford University Library. I taught at Oxford, and I love the Oxford University libraries. Each college has its own, and then they've got the Bodleian. What's not to love? You know, I used to go and do a lecture in the evenings, and I'd always spend a few hours in the library first before. And to me, this was a journey of searching for wisdom always. And then as a teacher, I just share whatever I can with students. I want them to fall in love with learning and to fall in love with wisdom. That to me is what philosophy is about. And then I've also traveled a lot in France, in Paris. The libraries of Paris I love, and UNESCO library headquarters I've spent time in. Also in France, I moved here 7 years ago, and the libraries of France are unbelievably good. Every town of a certain stature has a brilliant library. Limoges, near where I live, Lyon is unbelievable library. I could spend days in Lyon. And it's just at a standard of sophistication. Like in Lyon Library, there's a whole floor dedicated to world poetry. You can wander among the shelves and find the great South African poets, the poets from Mozambique, from China, from Japan, as well as France. They're all there in translation and originals, like just a normal civic library. And then I want to reference the Vatican Library because when I've been to Rome a few times, I've been to peace conferences, and I have a Vatican reader's card, and I've spent time studying there. It's just like heavenly to me. I could spend, you know, my whole lifetime just in any one of these libraries, actually. And then also Monte Cassino Library, the great monastery in southern Italy on the way to Naples. I spent time there reading and just you know, every time I visit a library and see all these wonderful works, I feel less sure. I feel more ignorant. I feel like a little child, like in my parents' library when I started out, surrounded by all this wisdom. And what can I do to make a difference? And I want to finish with one little aside. When I taught at Oxford, I discovered something interesting about King Alfred the Great. He is the founder of Oxford University, according to us Oxford people. And he was the wisest king of England, called Alfred the Great. He was the youngest son of the King of Wessex. He never expected to become a king. He wanted to become a scholar. And he devoted his childhood and youth to reading. He became fluent in Anglo-Saxon and Latin. He was passionate about books. And then sadly, his elder brothers all were killed in war. And he eventually had to become king. Because of his classical scholarship, he was really good at being a general. And he managed to defeat the Vikings who were overrunning England. And he was successful as a king. He had an advisor, Asa of Wales, who was his archbishop. And he used to say to Asa that we have a letter extant. Dear Asa, I never have enough time in my life to do all the reading I want to do. I'm too busy being a king. I have to give courts, judgments, found monasteries, adjudicate quarrels between people, and, you know, raise armies and win battles. I never have enough time for reading. You tell me when I get to heaven, I'm going to heaven. So is there going to be a library in heaven? He wrote to Asa this, and Asa wrote back the following. He said, Dear Alfred, we know your love of learning. I'm sure that if when you get to heaven there isn't a library, they will make one specially for you. So I just want to end with that. And I feel, so I've just been a pilgrim of libraries in this life, searching for truth and searching for peace through scholarship. And I'll see you in the library in heaven, if not before, because like Alfred, I believe, convinced that there is such a thing. Okay, there we are. That gets us started.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was very interesting. We have people raising hands to give. I mean, Thomas, that was a good recount. That was a good introduction to our flow of conversations today. Congratulations for the enormous libraries that we've visited. These days, we are lucky we have online libraries. Hello, we are lucky.
Yeah.
So tell King Alfred that he doesn't need to go to heaven to get a library. He can read one online when you find him. Welcome, welcome, colleagues. Let us have a chat about this one. Do we have a raised hand?
Okay,
yeah. Lester, you want to say something?
Could be. Teresa, please take the floor, invite people.
No. I just wanted to. I saw that Lester was talking, but then that's the EP comes back. We'll make sure that we hear him. I see that Richard, you've got your hand up.
Yeah.
Maybe you would like to.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon to you all. I'm so blessed once again to also open my mouth a bit. Please, I guess you can hear me.
Yeah.
Am I audible? Okay.
Yeah.
My reason of becoming a friend to books or friend for peace actually started when I was with my parents. My father was a police officer. And then my uncle too was a naval officer.
What's that flag in the background?
Of my days spent living in a barracks. And then at the barracks too, competitiveness. We were competing as to who looks clever, who is a clever. So I was trying to read a lot, not to know much then, but to score higher in my examination. Wherever my father goes on transfer, we also followed him. So in my basic level, I attended about 7 schools in Ghana. Then before I entered the second cycle school, over there too, I was doing well. Then it came that I had to go to College of Education to be trained as a teacher. I was learning too. Then I had to go again to the university to better my education. There I was called some time ago. Then I was a course prefect. And then SRC2, I was the secretary. I realized the need for peace, the need to put people at peace. Because as a secretary, SRC, you can't live with people who are angry. You need to calm students down. And luckily, we had a call that Center for Human Security in Africa, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, want people, students in Africa, to pick. So I enrolled through an essay competition, and then I had a chance. So in Ghana, 2000 in Ghana, were 2 that were picked. One from Kwame Nkrumah University, and I was then also in University of Cape Coast. Were picked to study a philosophy. Hello, to study a philosophy at the Bells University of Science and Technology, Nigeria. I realized, no, I'm being called for peace, peace building. Lest I forget, my uncle too was with the peace, the former UN Secretary General, the late Kofi Annan. I realized how well he was, how agile in confronting the family he was. So when I was called by His Excellency Olusegun, I didn't hesitate at all. I joined his institute, and then through that I had an email from Global Peace to Tanzania. I didn't know how my email address was even got, but I knew it was from one of the websites. Since then, I've been with several institutions. I've been with Melpark University, South Africa. I've been with London Graduate School, Commonwealth University. I'm currently researching with social protection too, and then global ethics. A lot of institutions that I present. Hello, please. Am I on the right path? Hello. Hello.
Sorry, we can hear you. We had.
Okay. Oh, sorry. So that has been my journey to peace. And then with global ethics, we are taking through topics like ethics in leadership, ethics in higher education. So through all these things, I realized that they are all calling for peace. So my involvement in peace studying is actually so simple as I've narrated. Thank you.
Peter, thank you,
Yes.
Richard. Peter, you had something prepared as well that you wanted to share with us, and we are looking forward to hearing you.
Well, thank you.
Richard?
We have one other hand up. Evelyn?
Yes, Evelyn. Mm.
Let's hear from the audience as much as possible, which will spare us the intense pressure.
I think your story, you worked on your story, and you humble, and you don't like to put yourself forward. So I'd like to make a proposal that after Evelyn, you share your story so we can hear you, or
Okay.
you go first and then Evelyn can go second. But I think it is important we hear you, Peter.
Well, thank you. Evelyn.
I'm very embarrassed since this is only my second time joining this group. But perhaps I'll start with Thomas's reference to Philosophers for Peace, because I'm involved in several initiatives on bringing peace professionalism, and based on not just competencies, but also values. We have developed a process for accrediting peace professionals based on core values and key competencies. And one of our accredited peace professionals, going through the process as we tried to make sure that it was workable, was Dr. Wendy Hamblett of Philosophers for Peace, to demonstrate that any sector of society can be part of the peace process. My own journey began, I was born enemy alien number 1098 in a prison of war camp, a British prison of war camp in Zimbabwe, because my parents were German farmers farming in what was then Tanganyika, which didn't have enough space for a prison, so the Germans were imprisoned in Zimbabwe. I was then, after release from the prison, after my parents were there for 8 years, returned to a very rural farm in the southern highlands of what is now Tanzania. And my earliest childhood was among the Wahehe, because we were still considered enemy aliens by any expatriates. So out of this melange and a philosophical household that focused on the golden rule rather than any particular religion, has grown this commitment to trying to make some sense of the barriers that humans put between themselves. And so I would just end by saying that in processing the peace professionalism, the core values we came up with were empathy, sincerity, humility, willingness to learn, and so on. We have eight core values that we believe are universally applicable, although how they are practiced is very context specific. So the idea is not that there's a central group that decides how they are practiced, but just that humans share these values, and peace professionals hopefully put them into practice. Thank you. I'm sorry, I probably took too much time.
So thank you very much, Evelyn. I think that is a perfect narrative of someone who has come out of a particular experience and turned that experience into peacemaking and building for the rest of her life. So that's a wonderful example of, no matter where we come from, and even in those vulnerable situations, one can transform places and transform beings. So thank you for that. Peter.
Oh, thank you so much. I've decided to start in a rather odd way, and I want to appreciate Evelyn I had no idea of your background, and it's deeply moving. I want to share my screen. There is here we go. And Darcia is on, she will know about this, but this is a list of 2 different worldviews compiled by 4 Arrows, Mahingpe Topa or Don Trent Jacobs, PhD. And this is after Redfield, who had distinguished, I think, 3 worldviews, but now said that there was 2. And on the left, we see what I call the colonial, which, to be polite, we call the dominant worldview. And on the right, an indigenous worldview, which is shared across many, many, many indigenous groups on the planet. And I wanted to start with this because my view as I began to learn about this was that every human being has a separate view of the world. And one of the things that our nervous systems do is synchronize our views so that we seem to be sharing the same reality. And so in this view of things, the colonial worldview is the shared reality of basically the European colonialists. And you can see, just reading a couple of these, a rigid hierarchy compared with the indigenous non-hierarchic view, fear-based thoughts and behaviors versus courage and fearless trust in the universe. Now, this is not a binary. We compare and contrast them, but it's not one or the other. It's actually that, as I see it, humanity has split, and we have 2 approaches to life. And so one of the things that I've been writing about is that there seems to be a divergence in the human timeline, after which we got this, what I call scarcity accounting worldview. Howard Richards cited Orlean about this, saying our starting point, our way of talking about today's dominant social structure, is market separation. That is, a world in which each individual is cut off from their means of existence. Only the power of value invested in the monetary object allows the existence of a social life under such auspices. It reunites the separated individuals by building for them a common horizon, the desire for money, and a common language, that of accounts. So in other words, this terrible loss and disorientation we call scarcity, and to navigate this artificial terrain, we must use accounting. The vital necessity of relationship is still available, but no longer necessary and only for rent. So I've been watching the unfolding spectacle of the American election. And, when the pandemic came, we got on Zoom and we began to relate at a much larger scale you could be in a room with 1,000 people, but they were all little postage stamps. And brains can do a lot of work with images of faces like that. But chants and body movements in synchronization are the whole point of human gatherings, but only when they're in person. But only then can a crowd become a real community. So it's possible that regular gatherings can create a cumulative unifying effect, but video conferencing at scale with thousands cannot, unless there's some synchronizing function like rhythm or music. So large gatherings of brains bring our separate worldviews together, creating a shared reality. Large internet, quote, communities, being merely large numbers of computer connections, have the opposite effect, fragmenting and isolating individuals at the screens. So there are two worldviews or paradigms in play that are not the same two that I've put up on the screen. One is mental and the other is environmental. That's grossly oversimplified, but not completely invalid. One is rather dry script, and the other appeals to a kind of herding instinct. We've only been able to read and write for a few seconds on the timeline of humanity. Neurology is natural selection. Cultural selection works much faster, but we struggle to match up the words with our own embodied knowledge. So literacy is cultural selection. And so I pose the question, which is in play at the World Cup or the Super Bowl or an American election? It is not conducive to real relationship. What goes on in the reality between us out here, not in my internal state. So I suggest that the world has a much larger gathering of internal states and much less relating out here. And out here is where real life occurs. So we're in trouble. And this is why even on electronic connections, we need stories like Evelyn's, which pull us out into the space between, the space that is ephemeral. It's not persistent. It's like juggling. There's only juggling when the balls are in the air. So I'll stop there. That's really been the focus of my life for some time now. I think the last thing I'll say is it's a metaphor. Islands, we understand islands. But the thing that makes them islands is the water and the bottom of the ocean in which they're connected invisibly. We are all connected invisibly, and we need to learn to be present to that invisible connection.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was a huge reflection, a very healthy one. Thank you too, Evelyn, for giving Peter a ball to kick further. We have another raised hand from Lillian. Lillian, you're welcome, Lillian. Please.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can all hear me. Yes, I'm Lillian Waweru, and I work as a chaplain in the Kenya prisons. So I want to share my experience of the journey of my spiritual life is working in the line of peace, but I'm looking at peace in a different perspective of crime, because these are the people that we have been dealing with. And I had been working with the people who are serving in maximum prisons. These are people who are serving life sentence, death sentence, though death sentence is primarily out of practice, though it appears in our constitution. But I would say these are the people that I have been working with. And what we did in order to create peace back with the people in the society is coming up with the peace museums. And these peace museums, it's the inmates who are serving sentence, trying to look at how do they create campaign for peace within the society. And this is by looking at how could they help reduce crime in the community. And so when we started the peace museums, we were looking at being able to use the language that people understand most, being able to understand the traditions of the different communities where they come from so that they can communicate to them. And especially the aim has been to communicate to the young people that crime disrupts peace in the society. Crime disrupts peace at the individual level. And so we look at how do we communicate with these young people that they can understand that the moment they commit crime, then it interrupts their way of living and the way of living of the people. And in this case, with the peace museums, we did a lot of artwork. And in the artwork, they were making cards that they write messages. And then we look at how do we deliver these messages to the community. And then if there is any communication, we get the communication from the community, from the young people in the community, through the chief back into the prison. Then we also had the music, and in the music, we recorded music, and this music was even mostly traditional, using the traditional language and the traditional music that is well known to the community. And then we record the music and then share with the society. Then we had those who are gifted in writing and in poems. And then we do the same, the recording. But at the same time, on the spiritual part of it, because this is where I work mostly, I've been looking at how do I apply the Bible into this peace building so that we can create, because the main aim is reconciliation, reconciling the people with the community. And it is not easy because we have the challenges that come with that. But we've been looking at the application of the Bible, the spiritual, because that is the tool I use as a Christian to help the people understand the call to live in peace, the call, looking at what did Jesus bring into the community. His aim was to bring peace. And all the work that he did was to bring peace into the community. So we look at how can we apply the Bible to create reconciliation between the people and between the society and those in prison. Because at the end of the day, we say, even though they are convicted to life imprisonment, we are also taking them through a journey where they can look at themselves. And the moment they ask for reconciliation, they create that sense of forgiveness with the society, then they are able to assert themselves even at the court. And we help them present themselves at the court that this is what they have done. They have sought reconciliation with the society and accepted back. And this is a journey because it's a journey where you don't journey with the person for a day or two, but it takes a year, 2 years. And I can say to create peace is a journey. It's not something we can achieve within a day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lillian. That was another good reflection, working with the prisons, and you see the essence of crime and how peace builders ought. But what brings the crime? There's something which is not right with the peace of the place. Point to ponder. Welcome. Do we have another raised hand? Thomas, how do you say about that one? about Lillian's reflection of the prisons.
Well, I thought that was very moving. Thank you, Lillian, for your work. It's
Mm,
amazing.
mm,
I'm mindful of this issue of prisons, and
mhm,
I've known chaplains as well. So that's really important work you're doing. Peace has to be inclusive of every community and every person, however lost they've got in their life, maybe committing acts of violence and so on. We as a community need to be able to reach out and show another way. So she's at the coalface, bless her. But just a reflection is, there are also criminals at high level in government, politicians who control armies and start wars, who ought to be in prison, in my opinion. And then there are lots of people in prison for, I don't know, smoking cannabis or something, that shouldn't be in prison. So we live in an upside down world where justice has got inverted in some way. We need, and this is where we need sociologists like Lester to explain how we put it right side up, and get the real criminals in prison, and the petty criminals, they can go out and do music and dancing. That would be my comment to that. I think that's what Christ wanted. He wanted a bouleversement of where love reigns supreme. But we live in a world where violence, fear, and punishment reign supreme. Could somebody just comment? I heard on one of these calls, I don't know, that there were no prisons in indigenous Africa before the whites came. Is that really true? I mean, presumably there were in the Islamic world. I don't know. Are prisons a colonial thing? And how did indigenous Africans deal with crime and punishment? Just
Yes, Peter has an answer. Do you have an answer to that, Peter? You're welcome.
I can tell you that in the United States, prisons were invented by the Quakers, of which I am a member. And the penitentiary was a place for penitents. It did not work out very well. In those times, there were Quaker slaveholders as well. I wanted to remark, Lillian, I'm very fond of prison chaplains particularly. And there is a famous one now, Chris Hedges, who teaches in prisons in New Jersey to this day. He's a famous journalist and reporter, spent many years in the Middle East, and he's an ordained minister. I think he's Presbyterian. But I used to work with a group called the Mastery Foundation, doing workshops for people in ministry. And we never defined ministry, but some of the ministers did. And one of them said this, and it was someone who'd been a hospital chaplain. And the first day on the job, she had to go down to a room and be with parents whose baby had just passed away. And she didn't have anything with her. She hadn't brought a Bible or a crucifix. She said, or somebody in that meeting said, ministry is being with people who are being with the unbeable with. And in essence, to me, that says it's not about what you show them or what you teach them. It's about being with. And that's all it's about. The rest of it is just an excuse.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for banking in there. Yeah, we really have to think, what is the essence, what is the cause of crime? Thomas, you said something. We have to invert this pyramid to make the real criminals in the prison and the petty criminals outside doing music. That's a good thing, I think. We have a raised hand from Afiz. Afiz, you're welcome. Let us hear your insights.
You have to unmute, Afis. We can't hear you.
Unmute your microphone.
Thank you. I've done that. So I want to contribute to what Thomas said about Africa prison. That is there any Africa prison before the coming of the white men? How are they practicing their own prison? Is it in the same sense with the European prison, talking about the concept of prison in Europe? Now, I would like to share the Africa view. If it is not that so universal, I think within the sphere of Nigeria, I can actually talk about the use of prison before the coming of the white men. And I would like to be particular about it. I will talk about the Western region, what and how they are practicing, or what the use of the prison for them. So in the core value of Yoruba people, particularly because they dominated the western part of Nigeria. So the ideal of the prison then was to try to keep someone that have committed sin, because then they have not relate sin, whatever crime that someone's committed, it is being related to sin. And in most cases, it is the gods. I mean, G, small g, G-O-D-S, gods. Perhaps like God of Ayelala, God of thunder, God of iron. They believe these gods, they have more power to be able to identify the sinner among the people. So why they put them for prison for a few days, for them to await the judgment of the gods. So they are most like, that is why then the prison is not congested, because now we cannot be talking about the congestion of the congested prison. But then, because the judgment is immediately, like Alilala can strike with thunder to bring out the culprit if the person doesn't want to confess in the public about what he has done as a crime. So in using God intervention, people that started in using God intervention, there are some foul play along the line, because they believe that if the gods can strike the sinners or the criminal, there are some ways they think that they can appease the gods so that the gods will not strike. So these shortcomings come from the priests that are custodian of all the gods. So, but the coming of the white men changed the view to enslavement, because they started using the prison for slaves. One community will have clash with another community for the purpose of capture people for slavery trade. So that is when the prison, we call it Chubu in Yoruba language. That is when the prison started, they started using the prison for trade purpose. So they are not in need of gods again, because they know the person that they capture as a slave, he has not offended or committed any crime, but for their own selfish interest, so that they can exchange people for commodity. But as time goes on, the people started liberating themselves through the communal effort of the people of one family trying to support each other, so that they will not be able to capture for slavery. So the civilization that now overtake the ancient ideology make them to stop the slavery. When the slavery trade stopped, then we don't have any sense of the olden prison again. That is why we lose the value of the God's intervention in the activities or action of the people in the society. But the only one that we can still point out that still remains is divine Ifa, we call it Oracle, because they are still consulting Oracle. Perhaps if they want to, and well, they want to crown someone as a king, so they need to look for the best. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Hafiz. I can bank in also there. We have a very nice story that before prisons, they waited for the gods, yes, but people were sent to evil forests. There were forests where it was believed
Exactly.
their gods or
That is part of the
animals
God's
who take
intervention.
charge of them. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
You remember that? Here we
Yes,
had
of course.
people being sent to forests to stay there alone from that society.
Banished.
That was a kind of
They are banished
punishment
to the
or
forest.
prison, so to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
We have two hands. We have a hand from Evelyn, but again we have from Ben. We haven't heard from Ben. Let us hear from Ben, then Evelyn, then Lillian again. You're welcome. Please, Ben.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I will start from a comment about what Thomas said. First of all, when I read this, the email sent by George, I read that the theme was spiritual storytelling, something like that. So I think my story will go out there. But to Thomas, I may say thank you very much, because when I was listening to you, I realized that you are not only, my impression is that you are not only the, how to say it, the pilgrim, as you said yourself, but you are what I could call also globetrotter for peace. So many thanks for that. But my reaction is that, of course, I'm saying that with respect. I can tell you that when you were busy traveling and searching for wisdom, and the problem was behind you, the West. By West, I mean EU states of today, UK states, US, and also the East. By East, I mean Russia, China, South Korea, Japan. All these nations were transforming Africa in war zones, in whichever way. What I would like to say is that, as the late Professor Kizerbo, Burkina Faso-born historian, said it, he said, elderly are library. He was writing about the traditional Africa, where there was no library like a British British library or British museum you were talking about. In traditional Africa, libraries were elderly, where young people could go for wisdom, to search anybody who wants, for example, to be married, will consult the elder of the village. So to see how Africa has been made a mess while we scholars, we are traveling, what we need is that is my point of view. What we need today is people transformed in libraries. so that they can be ready to give solutions to all these situations we are going through today. Now, having said that, I can come to my own story of peace. How I have landed in this terrain of peace building. My background is from radiology in hospital. My wife and I, we worked for many years in a church hospital, CME hospital in rural hospital, but very renowned in the Congo, so-called Democratic Republic. And but one day something happened. The war started, and everything collapsed. We who were comfort in our zone, we became a target. So the first thing we did was, what can we do? You know, naturally, by common sense, when something happens, we human, we have to, if you find that young people playing in outside, and then you see them, the young people who are playing now fighting, naturally your intuition is to go and help them, to say, don't fight, you are brothers and sisters. So we landed in setting up a peace organization called CRC, Conflict Resolution Center. The name is in French, Centre Résolution Conflit. Later, sorry, when we were, this idea came as a positive answer to an incident where I was nearly killed. I was going to a funeral, and then I found more than 30 young people who have taken drugs, waiting for who to kill. You know, out of the blue, my life nearly ended there, if it was not a miracle from heaven. Long story you can find in a book called Unarmed Heroes, written by Peace Director based in London. I'm not the only one in that book. It's about 16 people worldwide who, like me, have become peacemakers from different backgrounds. Later in 2000s, when the Congo War took the direction of what I can call Rwandan genocide style, where militias were leading the whole country, the establishment was turned down, upside down. So militias were giving orders to pastors, to faith leaders, to anybody, to universities, to students, to kill their colleagues. You can't imagine this. And that is where life changed. You can imagine, you are working in hospital, those who are now ready to kill you are your colleagues in the church, your colleagues' pastor. So 2000 was horrible. That was a time, praise God, we were forced brutally to flee and save lives. So praise God, and thank you for the international law, which gives the opportunity or let's say chance to anybody in that kind of situation to flee in another country to search for sanctuary. So here we are today in the UK. So from UK, what we do, because we have become living libraries, we go back since the 22 years we are here things have positively changed slowly. Those who wanted to kill us are no longer there. They have been killed by their own colleagues. Because when you are busy, as it said in the Bible, anybody who kills by the sword will be killed by sword. This is what I always say to what is happening in Gaza, what is happening in Ukraine, in Russia. You kill human being, sooner or later you'll be killed in the same way. So from these young people who nearly killed me have been killed by their own colleagues. Now I'm able to go back. So we have a CRC based in Bradford, the UK version of CRC. We go once a year to be libraries out there to help these people to change their life. It's a long and hard work, but that is what we do. Today we have what we call Peace Building and Reconciliation Mission, and we are just coming from Congo, where this year we have done amazing work, and it's sad to see what is happening there. The war is still going on, but in total silence. And we visited a refugee camps where you can't imagine millions of people are packed on a small terrain, and you see how people are suffering in their own country. I don't know. All that because of these gadgets we call mobile telephone, which are designed from the mineral called coltan that you find only in the Congo.
In the Congo.
So instead of being blessing for these people, it's a curse. And also because of the what we call here in the West, electric cars designed from the mineral called cobalt. And strangely, you find the cobalt only in the Congo. So Congo could be among the richest. But what is sad, to get all these minerals and to design this mobile telephone or the electric cars, they use strange methodologies they call in economics, minimize the cost, maximize the profits. For me, this kind of principle coming from the university is really demonic, because these are what is killing people up there. Plus 10 million plus have been killed. And my dear peacemakers, I'm really challenging you. Can you become living libraries instead of just traveling? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was another thought of reflection.
Thank you.
That was heavy. Pole sana. So sorry for that episode, but one brave one. Lillian, Evelyn, before you leave, can you come in, please? And I've read your message that you want to leave, please. And then Lillian, our time is about to be up. If we can go then quickly. Karibu, welcome.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you? Yes. What I was going to contribute was, as I mentioned, it was the Wahehe in Tanzania who were our closest neighbors and friends, and their traditional justice system was a bit like the Napoleonic Code, with one difference, and the difference being that the first instinct when a crime was committed was to compensate the victim. And the way they did this was that everybody tithed to the chief in terms of grain or cattle or livestock. And this was held as a common value. If a crime was, they had codified the various crimes. If you lost an eye, it might be worth 2 goats. What they did was then, if a crime was committed, the victim was immediately compensated. And the criminal, if the criminal could not pay the fine or compensate the victim, then the chief would compensate the victim out of the common holding, and the criminal would do community work to work off his crime. So to me, it's a very interesting process where rather than shutting the criminal away, the issue was how do we compensate the victim? And through community work, one would assume a rehabilitation of the criminal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. I remember that was also the case. It is also some case in some tribes to date. That is the way. That's the way of how to console their community to date. There are some tribes, very strong tribes, who really hang on to that kind of system instead of taking people to the locked prisons. We have another contribution from Lillian. I saw you raised your hand. Lillian, welcome,
Yes.
so that we come to an end of
Thank
this.
you. Okay, I just wanted to make a short comment on the reason. Okay, we may not actually deny the fact that now we have the prisons, despite the fact that we did not have them in our traditional African setup. But this is where, personally, I look at myself as a link between the society and those in prison, because our aim as Kenya prisons is rehabilitation and reintegration. So we rehabilitate so that they can be reintegrated back into the society. And this is where I look at myself and those working in the chaplaincy as an opportunity to help those outside the prison to accept those in the prison. Because at the end of the day, after our work is done in prison, where they go back to the society. And for those who may remember, we had the year of mercy, the year that Pope Francis had set for those in prison. And that is a year that we really campaigned quite a lot on those people who are outside, those of goodwill, because it's not everybody. There are even some of us who are priests who will wonder, what do I have to do with a prisoner? But at the end of the day, they are human beings. And I believe that is why even most of the countries have been fighting against the death sentence, because these people need to be given an opportunity. And I look at the fact that if God himself gives us the opportunity to live again, despite the fact that we are sinners, why can't we give that person in prison that opportunity to live again? And I think my joy is when one leaves prison and is accepted back in the society. It is quite a tedious work because we have to move to and from the prison to the society to ask the community whether they are willing to take this person back. And that is quite a journey, but personally, it's a journey that gives me fulfillment spiritually. And it's like every time I'm serving those in prison, I feel more fulfilled than even serving those in the community, because these are people who have been rejected. These are people who need love. And as someone said, it's not, they don't need much. They just need someone to sit with them, someone to listen to them. That is all they need. And I think that is why I feel my passion is bringing Christ to those who are in prison. And that also helps me discover Christ in myself, because I cannot give what I don't have. And I think that if I give my spiritual journey, it is as a journey through the prisons where I have worked for 31 years. And it just gives me fulfillment. And I long for morning to come for me to go and meet. It's like I sleep with someone in mind that tomorrow when I wake up, I want to meet this woman who needs someone to listen to them. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lillian. That was a good one. And it is indeed the purpose that we're looking for, peace. We've found our purpose. I can see the purpose for Lillian's life. What is your driven purpose? What drives you to look for peace? We have very many stories, I'm sure. We've heard from Thomas, we have heard from Peter, Evelyn. We've had lots of stories here. And I trust that everyone has a story. I have a story I'll share sometimes. But as of today, thank you so much for all those who have contributed. Do we have another raised hand here before we come to an end? No hand raised?
Can I just say?
Okay. Oh, okay. Raise your right
1
hand.
minute.
Right. Welcome,
about
Thomas.
the thing that we were told about compensation instead of prison. I'm an expert in the history of Anglo-Saxon and Celtic Britain, and in the Anglo-Saxon legal system, they did compensation. There were no prisons in Old England. It was if you injured a neighbor, you had to then give them compensation. Either you repay the cow or the house you burned or whatever. And I've always thought that is a much better system of law. And the same in Ireland, in the Celtic world. These legal systems, they had it very well, if you slept with somebody's wife, you owed them whatever, it was all sorted. And instead of locking up people in prisons, like in America, they have millions of people in prison. Why don't we bring back that compensatory system where you get fined and then that goes back to the victim and so on? So I was really pleased to hear about the system in Africa, how it worked. I think that was very moving testimony from our friend.
Yes, yes, it was, Thomas.
There's too many people in prison at the moment.
Too many people in prison. And here is George. Welcome, George. Long time.
Thank you so much. Hello, thank you so much, Bit, for this wonderful moderation. And I thank everybody really for sharing your own spiritual journeys. It has been really, really wonderful. And well, like every time I say, well, this is the best webinar. But I tend to refrain from that because like every time we meet is something really special. Today was a real special webinar. And I thank you for these wonderful stories that you have shared. I have mine also to share, but I think the time is not our best ally. And I also do like Peter saying, okay, I can do it at the end. So thank you also, Peter, for sharing and for also being in the background, moderating with us, recording. This is really wonderful. Of course, as you can see, our three speakers today have all of them spoken more than once at this Global Peace webinar, and they represent many other speakers. And I thank also those who've been also in the attendance. I know some of them are just quietly listening. I've never heard their voice. Well, I was also particularly so happy to hear Lydian, because I can see that my phone is, somebody's trying to call me. So thank you so much indeed. Bit, please proceed. Go on, please.
So much, George. Thank you so much, George. Thank you for coming in. Although, thank you. It has been a long safari. You're welcome back to Mwanza. And the time we have some like 5 minutes, 6. We can. Do we have something to point? Ben, do you have something to say? Anyone before we all close? Oh, please, welcome. Welcome, Clip. Chip.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
So thank you for this terrific sharing. And I'll just focus on one word, which is love. So my journey through peace has been sort of ending up with the word love. And whenever I hear the word peace, I kind of translate it into the word love as the means and the end. So what my hope is, just like in the last 50 years, we've developed maybe several hundred peace organizations, that in the next 50 years, maybe we could develop several hundred love organizations that would build on peace and take it to the step of a very vibrant and active peace. So that's my wish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. We should now start love organizations, not peace organizations, according to Chip. We'll take that one. We'll take that. So, George, you have another formulation to make. It's the love organization. Let us make love organizations more.
Can I just respond to Chip? I just want to say something to Chip.
Respond to that.
1 minute.
Thomas,
So,
you're
Chip,
welcome. Yeah.
you're right. And
Mhm.
so in 1993, I launched the Love Journal, which is the academic journal of my Peace Institute. I came to the same view. We won't get peace on the planet till we know what love is, including friendship, cooperativism, altruism, all types of love. And so there is a journal for love studies. And if I'd like to ask you, Chip, to do an article for us after your lifetime search, what is love to you? Make it autobiographical, and I'll publish it in the next issue. I've got an editor coming in a few days' time. So I'll put my email in chat. Send me your article for the Love Journal. And the same goes with anyone else if you want to do your views on this.
Thank you so
what is
much. That is a good one. Chip, take the challenge, please. Do an article for love.
Yeah, let me process that and see how to love that.
Oh, yes, please do that. All right, colleagues, we are coming to an end of our presentation and stories today. It has been a wonderful sharing of experiences. All the stories were just beautiful. They're just heart taking us away from our natural comfort zones to think further into how of making peace much more, now love, much more relevant in our struggles. Thank you, all of us. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Afiz. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody, Lillian. All of us who have had time to share the stories today, or even to listen to our stories today. It has been a wonderful presentation today. As we wind up today, we hope to see you next week again for another Peace, Africa Peace and Development Network webinar. Please, all of us, welcome back next Wednesday, same time. Until then, ciao, ciao. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.
It was very nice.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye. 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 Bye. Bye, Lillian. Bye, everybody. Bye, Ben. Bye, George. Bye, Sister Kinikonda. Oh, yeah. All. Bye, Afiz.
Yes, bye.
Bye.